Alright, so what I've got this week is one of those little happy accidents. I was messing around with one of the tools in Photoshop and actually stumbled upon a really cool effect, which I tend to play around with a little bit more and actually got a pretty cool result out of it. And that's what we're going to implement here in a kind of a sci-fi text effect. So, let's begin by creating a brush. Now, we're not going to use the traditional brush tool as you might think here. We're going to go over here and grab the smudge tool. Now what's interesting about the smudge tool is that a lot of people think it's just that. You just grab it and you can smudge pixels around, as you can see here. Well, it also does a few other things. Now, before I start, I just wanted to point out that I am working on a black background and I've created a star field effect here, which I had done. If you want to learn how to create that, it's on a previous tutorial here on Planet. If you look in the tutorial archive, you'll see it's a space background. And I go through exactly how to create that. And using that background, we're going to create our little space text effect. So as I mentioned, I've got the smudge tool selected, and we're going to go up here. I'm going to open up my brush panel right here. You can see right here on this little panel here. Click that. It'll open up the brush options. Now, I want to select a kind of a dry scatter brush here. I'm going to go with this one right here. And if you just hover over it, you'll see it says dry brush. So I'm going to select that. Where'd it go? Right there. Number 39 there. So what we've got over here is that the other dynamics is already activated. I'm going to go ahead and check that off. And I'm going to go up here to the brush tip shape area, and we're going to go right in here to this preview here, which this allows you to change the rotation of the brush, and you can also change the roundness of it, right? By grabbing any one of these top or bottom points here, you can actually change the diameter or the shape of the brush. We're going to push this all the way flat, pretty much to right about there. If you see over here in your document, you can see the preview there. And I'm going to use my right bracket key as I normally would and just increase the diameter of that brush or increase the size of it. And you'll see what we've got there is just a long horizontal line of a brush. And as I mentioned, we're using the smudge tool. So we're not using a regular brush in a sense here. So how are we going to brush pixels in? Well, that's up here in the options bar. If you were to use the smudge tool as it were, with these options checked off, all it's going to do is smudge the pixels that are on your document. But now in this feature here, this one's called finger painting. Now this is a feature a lot of people tend to overlook because A, they don't know what it does, or B, they really never had a use for it until now. This is actually really cool. I'm going to leave the finger painting checked on, and I want to make sure that I'm using or set the foreground color here to white because it's going to use whatever foreground color you set when it does a finger painting. Now, basically what it's going to do is it's going to just put a little bit of pixels when you initially click and drag. It's going to lay down a few pixels and then you can smear that the rest of the way. Pretty much the same as finger painting is. You squirt down a little bit of paint and then you just smear it around with your finger. So if I just show you here, I'm just going to click and drag and you can see it lays down that ink or the pixels. And I can, if I don't release my mouse, I can actually come here and smear it around. But I don't necessarily want to do that for this particular effect. What I'm going to do is go ahead and create a new layer. And right in the center of the document, I'm going to start. I'm going to make that brush a little bit bigger. I'm just going to click, hold down my shift key, and then brush upward. Now, notice a couple things going on here. It's flaring up these pixels just like I want it to, but it's giving me some streaky lines that are going up here. We're going to take care of that in a moment. Now, the degree of how much this blurs out or draws out is based on this strength setting here. Here I've got it to 85. And just to give you an idea, if I take this all the way up to, say, let's go with 95, and I do the same thing, click, hold down the shift key, and then drag up, it gives me much bigger streaks there. Well, I don't want streaks quite that big. I'm going to leave it to where I had it, which was at about 85. So now we're going to go over here, and I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing. I'm going to have to click, hold down the shift key, and then drag up. Now you have to click and then hold down the shift key every time, because if you don't, I'm going to go over here to the side. If I just click and hold down the shift key and drag up, and then not release, it's going to do that. It's going to actually remember where you last were. So you've got to release the mouse, click again, hold down the shift key, then drag up. Click, shift, upwards. We're going to go down too. We're going to go over here and just go click, shift, down, click, shift, down, and just go across. And notice what kind of cool effect we're getting here. It's kind of a galactic, kind of nebulous coolness. I don't really have a name for it. It's just what it is. Oh, I didn't hold the shift key on that one. Click, shift, drag up. And I'm not going to click, drag. I'm just going to click a couple of times just to kind of put some spattered pixels there because we are still in fingerprinting mode. So now you see all these streakiness we've got going on here beyond our little flare here. I'm going to go ahead and take the eraser tool, relatively soft edge, and just brush those away. Get rid of those little color streaks there. So now we've got our cool little nebulous shape. We're going to enhance this a little bit more with a layer style. I'm going to go ahead and double click on this to open up the layer styles panel, and we're going to click and activate outer glow. And we're going to change the color. I'm going to go with kind of a pinkish, spacey, nebulous color. Go with kind of like that. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to increase the opacity all the way up to 100 so it gives me a really vibrant color there. Going to change the blend mode from screen to this one right here, linear dodge. It's going to make it a little bit more saturated, a little bit brighter there. You can see the difference. And that's all we're going to do. If you wanted to increase the size of the glow, you could, of course. It'll just give it kind of an interesting effect. I'm going to leave mine at around 15 there. We'll click OK. Now, even after I've applied the effect, you can go in here and apply more streaks. If I go in here in the center, just click, drag up, it will redistribute the layer style based on where you're clicking and dragging, or where you're creating new pixels. I'm just going to brighten up the center area here a little bit. And again, we've got streakies out here, so let's take that eraser tool, brush those away. And there we have our cool little shape. Well, I'm going to scale this up a little bit. And I'm just going to nudge it down. And let's kind of center it. I'm going to do a select all of the entire document, and then just click this center icon up here at the top, align horizontal centers, and there we have it, dead center. Now, let's go over here and grab our text tool. Click inside the document, and I'm just going to type supernova. That's a nice, cool, science, spacey kind of term, isn't it? So I'm going to hold down my Shift Option and just scale that upward. And we have to change the font, because you know there is a standard font in all movie titles and things like that, and of course it is Trajan Pro. Beautiful. And we need to go ahead and fill it with white, so I'm going to press Option Delete since white is on my foreground color, and let's press Command or Control T. And again, holding down Shift Option so it scales proportionally to the center. Just going to scale a little bit so it fits right on top of my cool little shape there. Now, I want to put the same layer style that's on this little nebulous cloud onto that lettering. So to do it real quickly and easily, I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key and just click right on the effects icon in the layer and just drag it to the desired layer you want to apply it to, and boom, there you've copied the layer style. Look how cool that is. Well, I'm going to put a quick layer mask on that text, and let's grab the gradient tool here using the foreground, the transparent, and let's make sure we've got black set as our foreground color, so I'm just going to press the letter X to flop those colors. And again, starting from the bottom of the lettering, we are on the lettering, not the shape layer. Hold down my Shift key, I'm just going to drag upward a little bit, and that kind of gives it almost like it pushes it back, like that cloud is kind of in front of the lettering. And that's giving me a cool result there. So let's go ahead and take our move tool. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and select both layers and nudge that up into the middle. May even go ahead and press Command or Control T, and let's scale that up a little bit. And that's looking pretty good. So now let's add one more thing, or actually a couple more things just to finish this off. I'm going to go ahead and create a new blank layer above all these other layers, and I'm going to press Shift Delete. And we're going to use 50% gray as our fill, and then click OK. Then we're going to go into the filter menu and choose Render Lens Flare. And we're going to use a lens flare that I've never really used that much. In fact, it makes total sense. Movie Prime. You know, I usually use this 50 to 300, and that looks okay sometimes, but I really like the Movie Prime because it's got these kind of straight angular lines here that kind of go along with what we're doing. So click OK. And to blend it with my image, we'll simply change the blend mode of this layer to hard light. And look how cool that is. Now, these lines here tend to get cut off a little bit, so it's just a matter of dropping a layer mask on that. And again, using the foreground, the transparent gradient, just coming in from the top, come in from the bottom there, perhaps in a little bit from the sides here. Gives me kind of a cool finished effect there. I might even want to make that text a little bit bigger. And again, it's still editable text, so scaling it doesn't do anything to the pixels, just makes it a little bit more readable. Now, one last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select that layer with the shape on it and pop a new layer above it. And again, as we did before, I'm going to Option or Alt click that effects icon and drag it to the new layer so it puts the layer style on there. And again, back to the smudge tool, using that same smudge brush, but this time I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to use my left bracket key and just kind of make it a little bit smaller there. And instead of going up or down like we did before, I'm going to click, hold down the shift key at certain points on the lettering, and then go left to right. Just like this. And what it's going to do is give me kind of a cool streak there. If I click, hold down the shift key and drag left, click, hold down the shift key, drag right, and just do that at random points. And you don't have to go left or right on every one. I can just go over here and click, hold down my shift key, go left, and there's a cool streak. Let's go over here, click, shift key, go right, click, shift key. You can even go outside the area here a little bit and do all kinds of cool things. But I think you're getting the idea of how you can use various tools in ways you never thought of before, like that smudge tool. I never would have thought that I could create this kind of effect on it until you experiment and see what kind of cool things they can do. And then you start to think, all right, that's what the tool can do. How can I take this further? What can I apply this to? So, hope you learned something there. Give it a try yourself. I hope you have a good time, and we'll see you again.